The other one was concerned with sound and light. It went to planning and zoning last month, and they recommended a unanimous approval, recommend approval to you guys to do that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody on the council have a question? Gary?
I really don't. I mean, it's for reliability, for one thing. And,
Yeah, I actually myself found out I haven't been involved in this project, found out quite a bit, and I really appreciate the mayor being there because he bailed me out of tax money. He knew quite a bit about it. And it was very informative. And P&Z really got a lot out of it. And I didn't even know myself that this project, when it gets in, it's actually going to be fed from 2 different other grids. Basically, once we get that installed, the light should never go off in Greenville. So that's a, you know, you guys were talking earlier in the work session about the infrastructure for water and sewer, but this would be another one that helps boost the power up also. So it's a pretty good deal.
You have a question?
No, we have.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
How large is this tract that's being rezoned?
I believe it's a little over 4 acres. And currently that property belongs to the city.
Now, as a point of interest, we have representatives here from Garland, and Garland are the ones that do the installation, and TMPA has, Garland has a contractor for doing extensions and repair of substations and wiring. So we've asked them to be here if you have any questions that we'd like to get answered. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And you folks from Garland, we may need your help on anybody that's got questions. Okay, at this point, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this? Try not to all speak at once, I'll sort you out. Anyone who wishes to speak against it? At this time, I will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion to approve as recommended by the staff. John?
Second.
Molly? Please vote. And it's 6-0. Thank you. You folks from Garland, thank you very much. Sorry to bring you all the way out here, but I'm sure glad you were here. Thank you very much. All right, next item is 7B, consideration and action on an ordinance imposing a moratorium. Jerry, you want to discuss that?
well, as a chairman of the appearance committee, which is comprised of myself, Cedric Dean and James Evans, we've focused on 2 primary areas in the past couple of years. One of them is lots.
Can you move your mic down?
Oh, I'm sorry. Lots that are not mowed or maintained on a regular basis, and repeat offenders, and then the general appearance of downtown. And the reason we focus on this is because of input from citizens. I think it's important to know as we start this public hearing that many of the decisions we make are involved, a lot of the decisions we make involve appearance issues. And those of you that have been here know that we were recently had to approve the color of Mr. Satterwhite's home. We've discussed various times the collision center.
You're going to be famous forever, Jim.
Yeah, you are. We'll bring that up from now on. Usually these add delay and expense to the applicants. Recently, I think Mr. Money had to get a permit to erect a sign for his new office. So it's a standard thing that we face on a regular basis. So I don't think it should come as a surprise that the city accountants, the appearance committee, is alarmed about the rapid number of altercations that are going on within the downtown area. Now I want to put this in perspective, and members of the city council are here tonight to tell you that I've been the first one to suggest that we do some renovation, some upgrading of the downtown area, and which I believe really can become a destination for this area, where it's too late to become Camp Trade Days or Boat Art Festival or whatever. But I believe with what's going on and a little cleanup, and I'm not sure what the price will be or anything like that, but I think we can become something that people will want to visit. And we've asked the city to make recommendations and vet possible consultants that will come in and help us with this. And we hope to do something and hear something about on this in the next few months. I think the committee is concerned that the ongoing altercations, and some of them that you're aware of, and I'm not just talking about artwork, we're talking about the color of paint on buildings and various other things, will not match whatever we come up with if we decide if we want it to look like a gaslight district or whatever. Well, it's not going to, though whatever we're doing now is not going to be consistent with it. And importantly, I think that those will meet the architectural and aesthetic characteristics that we would choose. So we're concerned that what's going on may outrun what we'd like to do as a city. I think that's one of the primary concerns. We have also a lot of historical buildings downtown that should be revered, first of all, and protected, I think. And protection extends beyond the building or structure that's being altered. It includes the adjacent property owners whose values may be impacted by what's going on. Essentially, I think this is a public place. The public should be involved in determining what is appropriate for our city. And not just, for example, a road painter or a group that wants to make those decisions. Other cities, many other cities in this area, the city of Dallas, other cities have protections in place that address these various issues. What is the color of paint on a building? Is it consistent? What are the proposed paintings going to look like? Art objects, statues, etc. What about maintenance of these buildings? What's it going to look like after it's been weathered for 5 or 10 years with rain and sunshine and that sort of thing? And the historical commission that we're proposing addresses these issues. It's something that has to be developed. It's something that we'd like to get public input on. But I think it's something that every property owner in downtown Greenville would appreciate and needs. And I'll just tell you very frankly, I think if something isn't done, all of us, everybody here, whether you're opposed, whether you're for or opposed to what I'm doing, or what I'm suggesting, at some time, we're somebody is going to come in and do something downtown, and all of us are going to be sitting here scratching our behinds, wish we'd have done something, and now what are we going to do? So I'd like for you to think about that as we consider this. I know James may have some comments about it. We've worked extensively with Daniel on this. He's going to give you some overview and some timelines and hopefully more information than I've given. But we appreciate you coming here. We appreciate your comments. We'd like for you to be a part of this, but it's something that we really feel we need downtown. You know,
I'll add to what Dr. Ransom said. The historical, we've got a lot of this history in some of these buildings, a lot of history in downtown Greenville. We want to protect that. And again, the input. We've heard many comments, had a tremendous amount of public input on this just privately. I'm looking forward, as Dr. Ransom said, to anyone that wants to speak tonight. I'll definitely listen. But again, so far, it's overwhelming what Dr. Ransom described, our concerns. There are concerns that are valid in my mind. There are concerns in the other people who talked about.
Mayor, I'd like for Daniel to go through some of this. If you would.
Before he does that, I've got one other thing. What I'd like everybody in here to recognize is what we're trying to pass tonight, and what we're bringing up, is a temporary moratorium. It's not a final ruling. The idea is to put a temporary halt for a short period of time of additional paintings and sculptures and stuff like that. We want to establish a group of citizens to be able to be the party that looks at it and says, yay, verily. I mean, it's not something that as a council, we want to be the deciding people sitting here saying, no, I don't like that, or yeah, I do. I can tell you flat out, I can go to a museum and I like some paintings and I don't like others. But what we're trying to do here is to pass a temporary moratorium to put a stop on additional paintings and additional structure changes like that, until we can establish a citizens committee to review it, and that we can review existing policies and procedures that the city already has in place, and then we will try and figure out what we do at that point. But tonight, it's a matter of putting in a temporary moratorium. You want to?
Yes, that's right. Just to talk very quickly about what it is that you're considering tonight. First of all, there's not going to be a vote. This this is a temporary moratorium statute that allows the city to enact a very limited period of time moratorium on specific things and only for specific reasons. It's in Chapter 212 in the local government code. There's all sorts of different requirements. One of those requirements is that there be notice at least 4 days before the meeting. That was the newspaper notice was fit that requirement. Next, there has to be a first reading, which is what we're doing tonight. Next, there has to be a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, not on the Historical Commission, not on any other regulations, just on the temporary moratorium. And then, if the council wants to consider this and make this a temporary moratorium that lasts up to 90 statutory days, you will have to set a secondary meeting before the 27th of this month and take action at that meeting. If you do take action,
being saying if we vote on and say yes, we want to do it, or no, we don't.
pass the ordinance that
Yeah, I mean, we've got a meeting, and at that time, we would vote and say, yes, we're in favor of the moratorium, or no, we're not.
yes,
Thank you.
exactly.
Go ahead.
So until then, right now, there's no moratorium that exists. There's not one that exists until it goes into statutory effect, which is this Friday. If the council doesn't approve the moratorium ordinance, then it will die. If the council does approve it, then there will be a 90-day initial period to look at what the Appearances Committee has been working on for about 6 or 8 months, which is a historical commission for the town. If the historical commission is something that this council approves, then there's going to be an additional 6 steps that have to be completed before there are any powers of the historical commission that could have any effect on any development in any given area. In this case, we're talking about the central zone. Step number 1 is that the city council will have to approve the ordinance. Then they will have to establish a board. Then they will have to appoint the board. Board appointments for this type of state statute that allows a historical commission, and that is there's a form for this through the historical commission. Requires that certain types of people be appointed, stakeholders in certain disciplines like architecture, design, renovating older facilities, things of that nature. So the council will have to appoint those people. The next step is that those people are going to have to adopt a design manual. There's many of the cities that have done this have adopted wholesale the design manual that has been written by the federal government specifically for this purpose. And they do that because it opens up the possibility of receiving federal and state funds through grant monies if that design manual is adopted and followed. Next step is that the P&Z will have to meet. I believe that they have to have 2 meetings, one for the initial board adoption, and then a second one for the approval of the design manual. And then the final step before all that becomes effective and it establishes a new set of regulations in whatever area this council adopts. It's going to have to come back before the city council for a second, or well, I guess a third vote, technically a 4th vote. And at any step of the process, there are numerous different things that can happen. Council can vote against, obviously, this moratorium, number 1, or vote for it. When it comes up time to look at the historical commission. There's a vote that needs to be taken there. The planning and zoning commission also has power to vote no and to send things back and to present a no finding to the council as a recommendation. And our planning and zoning ordinance is pretty clear about what happens in those kind of situations. So that was the overall goal, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong when I'm talking about any of these underlying goals, but the Appearances Committee very strongly believes that the lack of any sort of regulation could potentially have a detrimental effect on property values and development downtown. There's a counter argument to that, obviously, that additional regulations cost additional money and could have a chilling effect. And so this is one of those times when we're not talking about policy and law so much as a basic philosophical position on how this council looks at the effect of long-term regulation. And that's one thing that we talked about extensively with the Appearances Committee, is looking not just at what's going to affect the downtown area or any of these areas in the next couple of years, but what it's going to look like 100 years from now. Because small changes right now are absolutely going to have a major effect long term. And so this is, I think, there's a lot of positions for and against doing certain things, but I think that this is one of the times when we have a watershed opportunity to sit down and talk about our philosophical ideas about how government should affect what happens with development in an area like this, and determine whether a historical district is best or not needed at all, and to figure out whether or not the city council is going to be involved in a full-scale downtown renovation and rehabilitation project like other cities in this area and in other parts of Texas, like Sulphur Springs and Waxahachie. Those things, this has basically come to a head at this point, and those things need to be considered immediately. What this 90-day moratorium would do would be to maintain the status quo for that 90 days and potentially for 30 days more than that if there's an extension, and allow time for a historical commission to be put in place, or if the pleasure of the council is that philosophical ideas about how government should affect what happens with development in an area like this, about the direction, policy direction, the financing, and an overall plan for increasing the property values downtown and maintaining the character of the area. Those are things that can be addressed during this time period. I think the ideas of the Appearances Committee at this point, we've mainly been talking about the Historical Commission. But since the moratorium came out, I've had quite a few very basic philosophical conversations with multiple stakeholders, and I think there's a whole lot of common ground, and I think that we can work creatively toward coming up with something that's going to do the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people in a pretty short period of time. Obviously, there are counter arguments to every time that there's a new proposed government regulation, and we've heard them all before on other issues, like government regulation causes a chill in development. It removes power from property owners and puts it in a nameless, faceless board. But whether or not those things happen and whether they have a detrimental effect, I think is going to be up to this council. And I believe that if you do want to move forward with something that we can work with a large number of people, and especially stakeholders who this is going to directly affect, and come to some basic agreements on what those next steps might entail. It's difficult for me to give you a whole broad scope of what those options are, because that I think probably is going to require some people with more experience and knowledge than certainly than I have. But tonight, this is the first reading. The only thing that's up for consideration in the public hearing portion is the language that's in the moratorium, which does include our reasoning for the appearances committee to move forward with a 90-day moratorium, which is basically to discuss other potential regulations, including a historical commission that would initially cover the downtown area.
The extensions of those, though, can go an aggregate of 180 days, but in 30-day increments or second 90-day.
You're right. I'm sorry. It's a second 90-day
Okay.
increment. It's 2 potential 90-day increments.
Very well need that time.
Yes, potentially, because of the numerous steps that are required to put those regulations in place.
Anybody have any other questions?
No questions.
Okay, at this time, I will open this to a public hearing, and I am going to impose a 3-minute time frame for each of you to speak. We've got a good audience here tonight, so we can get a good cross-section, but when your 3 minutes is up, if you don't say I'm done or step down, then I will ask you to step down. I'm not trying to be rude, but we do have a lot of people that deserve to be heard. So at this time,
Brian Hutchins.
Brian? And it's important so that we, Secretary, can keep the record straight, if you'll give her your name and address.
We're good on that. I'm in favor of it. We currently have a family business that has a conference room downtown.
When you come up, I'm sorry, even though
Sorry.
you gave her that.
Brian Hudgens, 6901 Gamecock, Greenville, Texas. We currently have a family business that has a conference room that looks out over the newest addition to ours. Sorry, I didn't want to get too close. And while it was done well, it doesn't necessarily fit the downtown historic renovations that are currently already going on, and some of the, I've had multiple conversations with people throughout the city this week, last week, that there are certain areas of town you have to get approval to do certain things, and from my understanding, this was inside those areas. So basically, we're all for anything that slows down the process of just allowing anyone to put anything they want up, because while it was very well done, there is going to come to the point where somebody does something that is racist, does something that's going to offend a whole group of people rather than just half of the people. So the only thing that I would say is, if we do vote for historical, that they have some sort of power to enact rather than just letters. Because I hear you get a letter, but really there's nothing more than that. And if there's not any punitive, then there's really no detriment to doing it. It's a I'll do it and ask forgiveness rather than permission. So, and I vote that we look at McKinney's way of their downtown square. I went there early in the morning. It's packed with people. The buildings look great. The renovations are nice. And I really think that businesses downtown want more people there. And they had kids walk in with families through the court square. And it was very nicely done. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Thank you. Okay, we have nobody else to turn the sheet of paper.
I'll turn it in beforehand. I apologize.
All right. Some guys will do anything.
I know, I apologize. My name is Clay Woods. I live at 3216 Washington Street, and I want to encourage you to pass this moratorium. I live in an historic house at the edge of downtown. Been the
Do or do
I
not?
do. I do. I've been past chairman of the Historic Commission, although I'm not speaking on behalf of the Historic Commission. There is a Hunt County Historic Commission. He's talking about a city historic commission that will be a little confusing with using the exact same name. And the Hunt County Historic Commission is an extension of the state appointed by the county. This is, for years, we've been trying to preserve the historic fabric that we've got in our community. And this is something that we're anxious to do. We've been fighting for years because there hasn't been a lot of interest in downtown. We've managed to keep this historic fabric in place. Now we need to make sure that it's preserved and not destroyed by allowing anything to happen. What we're looking at is something that we only have a chance to do it right once. And to do that right, we need to make sure we've got guidelines in place. We don't give people an opportunity to think something is a good idea at the time and then proceed to destroy this historic fabric that we've been trying to preserve. Good example of that, a number of years ago when Central Citizens Bank, I should say, was downtown, they wanted to tear down Central Christian Church for parking. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, so we had to address that from a, without any actual guidelines, but just a community outrage at that thought. And can you imagine had we lost that to a bank that doesn't even exist any longer and is not downtown? These are things that have to be addressed today so we can have the kind of town we want tomorrow. There are lots of resources out there. Other cities have got the historic zoning town already, I should say. The State Historic Commission has got an historic landmark preservation ordinance that we can use as a basis of ours. When the State Historic Commission members come to Greenville, they always comment on what a great downtown we've got and has been preserved. We need to make sure that we don't lose that by people coming in saying, oh, this is a great idea right now, and then further down the line we say, oh my gosh, how do we let that happen? So I encourage you to pass this moratorium. I would be glad to serve on a commission. If you had one, I would be very interested in making sure that we've got people that truly care about the history of our community and the future of it.
Thank you very much. Now, just so that everybody doesn't try and stand up at once, if you want to speak, if you raise your hand, I'll try and pick one from this side and one from the other side. Me.
Let me hand that to Carol. Thank you for your help. I want to, I'm Dennis Strickland, 6900 Joe Ramsey Boulevard here in Greenville, Texas. I want to speak against the moratorium. I want to, first of all, tell you that my bias is I like all the art that I see downtown. So that is my own bias. Secondly, I am not a visual artist, but I am a musician. I often refer to myself as a fake musician. And so I'm not even a musician. I'm a fake one. However, I have been to, I believe, every church in this town. I've experienced the music of every church in this town. A wide variety of music is out there. And, you know, I like all of it. I like every bit of it. In fact, once every 3 months, we have what we call Music in the Spirit at the Texan Theater, where we celebrate all those kinds of music. All those different churches get to come in and have like their 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And they play their music, they sing their music. It's just quite a wonderful 90 minutes we have together. The same thing that I see in the music, I see in the art. That we should not try to police creativity. And that, you know, we have artists. I'm amazed at all the talented people in Hunt County. I've only been here just under 4 years. And we are rich folks and people who have gifts to share. Not music, but visual arts and poems. I mean, this is a really rich cultural area that we live in. And to try to police that, well, God forbid. I would hate to see that happen. The third point I want to make is that my understanding, and maybe I have got it wrong, but the art that has gone up has been on a property that was owned by persons who were approving the art that has gone up. If there's been some that happened outside of that, well, then that would need to be, that's a whole other point. So the people who own the property, they are the ones, they have a high stake in that property, both historically and architecturally. They want to preserve that. It's an investment. I think we can trust them to take a pretty good care of that. And secondly, I wrote down real quickly some notes here. You know, it amazes me that in a political climate where we want less government, that we're talking about a conversation where we would govern art in Hunt County, right here in downtown Greenville. I think we should question that. What is that about? And the constitutionality of that the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. And then secondly, that the property owners have a right to their property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Somebody on this side, on the right-hand side, please.
Hello, my name is Gail Sprinkle. My address is 2304 Lang Street in Greenville. I'm a downtown business owner. I own the Uptown Forum. And when I bought it a couple of years ago, I was very excited about the new things I was seeing happening in Greenville because I've been away for 40 years and it's been very stagnant in my opinion for many years. I don't want to wait anymore. I'm against the moratorium. The reason I'm against it, I have signed 3 leases in the last few months working with the Board of Development. We have brought 2 businesses into Greenville that were expanding from other cities. And I have another business that was located somewhere else in Greenville. They moved downtown. They're now expanding their space that they're leasing from me. I'm on the verge of 3 more leases to sign. I don't want to wait. I think that Hunt County Public Art has done an amazing job in the art that they have put in downtown. I don't want to live in a museum city. I want to live in a diverse and vibrant and economically viable city. And I think that you do that when you have less regulation and less control. I have a few other points to make. One is that I wish that we would focus on enforcing the regulations we already have. I have a building that is right next to Uptown Forum that literally damages my building. I've had roof damage 3 times in the last 2 years because I have all this crap on top of their building. It literally blows over and hits my roof and damages it. Chris Kilmer's been up there 3 times fixing it. I wish that we would focus on that. There's a building that's across from me. It's got peeling paint. You drive up and down for Keep Greenville Beautiful. When we do downtown cleanups, we send people out, volunteers out, making lists of all of the debris that's in the streets. We have so much that we can do now, that we need to do now, that we're neglecting now. So my vote is against the moratorium. I'm not really in favor of a historical district. I'll listen to it. I'll be open-minded to it. But we have work to do now that we can do now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Somebody on the left side.
Derek Price, 808 Sahara Drive in Greenville. First of all, thank you for taking the time to address the condition of downtown Greenville, a place that's so near and dear to so many of our hearts. Personally, I think the 90-day moratorium could be a wonderful idea for our city, if and only if it's the first step in a comprehensive plan to improve and invest in our downtown area. If it's just a matter of short-sighted people saying, I don't like that painting, or I think I should approve it first, well, then that's another matter. I don't approve that idea. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's how McKinney came to become McKinney. It's a wonderful downtown, I agree, but if you also notice, they've got right next to historic buildings, colorful, vibrant, contemporary artwork. It's a wonderful model to follow. So if there's going to be an action plan for downtown, and it includes support and encouragement for creativity and art, it could be a wonderful thing for our city. I look forward to hearing more details about what the City Council has in mind. To me, that comprehensive plan has to have 6 things in it. 1, we need strict and consistent code enforcement downtown. If we don't do that first, we're wasting our time talking about this. 2, we do need a historic district, or at least a list of important historic buildings that'll be protected to preserve our downtown's character. The most vibrant cities I visit always find a way to showcase the historic right next to the contemporary. Go to New Orleans, go to Austin, go to Galveston, go to Sulphur Springs or Waxahachie, all these other places. They mix the historic with the contemporary. It looks beautiful. We can and should follow their templates. 3, we need a designated downtown arts and entertainment district where creativity is not only allowed, but encouraged and funded by public tax dollars. We should create a Percent for Art program, just like many other cities have used to successfully reinvigorate rundown areas very similar to Central Greenville. We need more economic incentives to attract specific types of businesses. We need an actual vision for how downtown should look. And finally, we need a major multi-million-dollar public investment in the appearance of our downtown. I also want to address a fear-based misperception that appeared several times in the memo about this issue, this idea that artwork will somehow decrease property values in Greenville. Every single study I've seen on this issue shows just the opposite happening in cities all over America. When artwork goes up, property values go up at an even faster rate. Google it. That's what the data shows over and over and over again. And if you think Greenville would be an exception to that trend, well, take a look at the actual Central Appraisal District evaluations of the properties that have gotten art on them downtown. In every single case, since the artwork went up, the value of the building also went up, in some cases very, very substantially. There's not a single example of a property in downtown Greenville that got art on it and then the property valuation dropped, which is the fear apparently of someone on the council. My favorite example is the Armstrong Appliance Building in 2014. We put art, the value is up 82.4%. So all I want to say is please, as you make policy decisions, look at the facts, don't base it on fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody on the right side. All right, you guys forfeit your turn. Anybody else on the left side? You didn't forfeit the right side, didn't forfeit all of your rights, just you lost the floor.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Jana Rose.
Feel free to hold that down a bit more.
Thank you. I just recently moved to Greenville. I'm from Marfa, Texas. My address is 5015 Joe Ramsey Boulevard. I don't know if many of y'all know about Marfa, Texas, but it is simply on the map because of its public art. It would no longer exist if it was not there. And my husband and I are both art graduates from Hardin-Simmons University, and he's now working on his master's in commerce. And when we first drove to the town, I thought, Carly, what are we doing here? There's nobody here. And we saw the artwork, and I said, wow, somebody cares. So then we trolled through the streets in Commerce and looked in buildings, and we couldn't figure out who owned them. We owned a photography business and kind of wanted to open something downtown. And we found places where the city had stored flags and cones and all kinds of things, but we couldn't figure out who owned them to try to purchase them. And I guess my concern is if nobody's willing to do something to fix what you have, why are you so against the people who are doing something now? I don't know, I just love it. I feel like if people put regulations on art without knowing what art really is and without being educated about it, I mean, why are you doing it in the first place? I don't want to see cover wagons and cowboys. I want to see something that's intellectually stimulating, something that the future can look at and say, wow, there's a purpose and there's a meaning behind that, and this is what it is. I would rather be on the forefront of it rather than behind it. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Once again, anybody on the right side? All right, anybody else on the left side? Anybody in the middle? All right, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing. Since we don't have a vote on this, we just move to the next item.
You don't have a vote, but you do need to talk about if you're going to have a second meeting. Because that has to happen under the statute by the 27th. Obviously, that's the 2 days after Christmas.
How do I get that without getting a vote to do that? I mean,
Well-
we don't vote on doing it. You told me we didn't
Yeah, we
vote.
can't vote on doing it. But if there's,
confused.
I'm saying we can provide input on dates that the council is available. They just can't vote on doing
Get the
that.
city secretary, just poll the council members, and decide what's appropriate.
Does it,
Yeah. She can.
does it have to be approved at the, P&Z before it comes here?
No, the P and Z is not a vote, it's just a public hearing.
Okay.
Um,
You had a question?
Well, I mean, it's not a question. I think, first of all, I want to thank everybody who came, wherever you are. I think everybody added something to the conversation. And I've learned a lot, even though we've talked about this quite a bit throughout this process, and also people who just posted on the Arrow Banner website or Facebook or elsewhere. I think that it's very important, at least from my perspective, that this is not just a moratorium, but that it's part of a global plan. And I think that from my conversations with Dr. Ransom, he agrees. And I don't know if it ends up being a historical commission or some changes in ordinances or whatever, but we need a design plan that includes zoning, building, and everything, and the things that Mr. Price talked about, economic incentives, investment by the city. Those are the things that we need in order to have a vibrant downtown. Public art, if you scroll my Facebook page or my life's, when we go to cities, we go and find big murals that are on art in Austin or in Nashville or whatever. I think that the downtown art does show that there are people living here and doing new things and exciting things. I think that's exciting. But I think that like a lot of things in our city, our council historically, and I'm not talking about this council, I'm talking about council over the last 30 years, is kind of reactive and just lets the world happen to us. And we don't have a plan going into it saying, hey, we would really like downtown to grow, and we should, as council has talked about on a number of occasions, we need to hire a consultant who's in the business of helping us figure out what we can do to be a vibrant downtown, get them in here and talk about all of these issues. Talk with stakeholders, Mr. Woods, Mr. Price, I see Erica Painter here, an artist, and others. We have a lot of people here with a lot of talent, a lot of ideas, and we need to decide what we want downtown Greenville to be when we grow up. Otherwise, it's just going to be each individual property owner deciding what they want their building to be, and there's not going to be any kind of plan. And to some extent, that's okay. It's okay for there to be creativity, but I think that we need to at least have that as a group discussion, not just each individual person. When Dr. Emerson pointed out, when I renovated my building, which is not the one that's hurting Gales, I don't think, even though we are neighbors.
I thought it was.
But I had to get a building permit before I could change the facade. Somebody at the city has to look at it and say, yes, you can do that. Before I can get a sign, I have to pay a fee. Somebody looks at my sign, says, yes, you can do that. It's not offensive. I was still able to do what I wanted to do, but if I just wanted to paint a mural on the front of the building, I could have, I guess, painted anything I wanted to, and I don't think that that's probably in the best interest of Ms. Sprinkle or my other neighbors. So I think I don't want to stifle art. I'm not an artist at all. I don't want to pick the art. I don't want to decide what's there. But I don't look at this as an art moratorium. I look at this as a global comprehensive planning. It's a time for us to call a timeout, get a game plan together aggressively. We've been talking about it ever since I got on council, but this is kind of an impetus to say, okay, we got 90 days, what in the world are we gonna do, and get a process started. And I would hope that the day that we vote on this moratorium one way or another, we also vote on a consultant, and the next week we're meeting with the consultant and inviting people in to talk. That's what I'm hoping we can accomplish in this.
Anybody else?
Yes, do you know what other cities have invoked this 90-day moratorium that have met with a great deal of success in their downtown, so we might have a visual of what we have to look forward to if we do this?
Well, I did not research it that way to see who
Sorry,
did a
but you're-
moratorium, and then also, because most of the cities that did the moratorium were to stop sexually oriented businesses or truck stops. I couldn't find any that used this section.
Same thing down south.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, I haven't done the research to know who has done the moratorium for this specific purpose.
I think,
Yeah, go ahead, no, go ahead.
no,
Well, I just wonder, is McKinney, for example, great example, is it a city that has a designated historical district that we know when you designate a historical district, there are guidelines, fairly significant guidelines. So did that happen in McKinney?
I don't know. I did not
Or
look at
Sulphur
McKinney.
Springs, or Waxahachie, or Pittsburgh, or Gladewater, or Austin, or
They're on the Texas Historical.
Rockwall?
Yeah, I think on the Texas Historical Commission website, there's a list of them that have adopted it.
Okay.
I didn't come prepared tonight to talk about that.
Yeah, I was
I
wondering.
will, if we have the second meeting, which, by the way, I was wrong on the date, it's not the 27th, it's the 24th. It must be held within 12 days of today. But at that second meeting, I can certainly bring a list of those and go over them.
Daniel, one time you did mention some cities even in this area that had done a similar.
I did, and I can't remember what they are.
I think one thing, I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminded me, but one thing, reason I think that the moratorium goes hand in hand with this, just as an illustration, is as we're starting this comprehensive planning and having a discussion, it could be that we, as stakeholders, council, everybody, we're having a public discussion about the kinds of things we want, ordinances we want to enact, design standards we want to enact, and someone decides, oh my goodness, if they enact this new ordinance on the first meeting in April, then I'm going to be blocked from, doing a hot pink, cotton, whatever. I'm trying to think of something that's hideous but not offensive. But it's something that everybody would agree that is not, that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate stylistically, not appropriate structurally or whatever. And I'm just going to rush out and do it. And as long as I get it done before the date they vote on that new ordinance, I'm good to go. Having a moratorium allows us to have a discussion and get our design standards in place, and nobody run to try to beat the clock on whatever those standards that we decide on as a community. So that's why, if it's just, hey, we don't want any new art in the next 90 days or 180 days, that's not going to get us anywhere. We're going to have a plan at the end of this, and we have a lot of work to do to get there, but I think this is a good idea.
Sure. The thing that I see in this is I understand and I appreciate the people that have spoken. Some say that basically they're offended by some of the artwork that shows up. Others are saying, no, we need to do more things that are more in a modern or thing like this. And I think that the council is not trying to become, and I know in the past we've had a lot of discussions about this, but I don't believe the council is trying to become a ruler that says, no, you can't paint that, yes, you can paint this, because I like that. What we're trying to do is come up with something that we think the citizens of Greenville will like. And while I appreciate the people that are artists and want to come and don't want to see a wagon train out there, there's other people that live in town and may want to see that. But what we're trying to do is give us the time so that we can figure out what does the citizens of Greenville want to do. Because whether you own a building down there, whether you're a new cut artist, or whether you're a long-term resident out there, you know, we've got about ballpark 27 or 28,000 people that are all paying taxes, and they want, this is their town too. So what we're trying to do is understand, what do the citizens of the town want to hear? And that's why I think that we're trying to get this moratorium and look at it, so that we've got a chance to look at it, hear what people want to say on it, and see what we want to do. So we're trying to get away from an edict coming down, which I don't think is a good idea. And I think we're trying, as Brent said, we're trying to understand what is the best way to go, what's the best for the growth of the city. I didn't mean to upset you, Jerry.
You did.
I had two questions about the ordinance itself, just for the city attorney real quick. One, is this just an exterior ordinance, or does this affect interior, or does the city not even have anything to say about interior? It talks about,
It's any alteration so that in my opinion, it does
so if
include.
somebody wants to change the
interior.
carpet or whatever, I mean, I guess,
Interior, it wouldn't affect it, would it?
I don't know if carpet would count as an alteration, but it's not limited to exterior.
so basically anything that you would have to come to the city for a permit for, to move walls or whatever.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
And there is a waiver procedure in here, because obviously there are things, you know, like what Gail was talking about with moving people in, if that's gonna require walls to be moved around. Obviously, it would be wrong for the city to jump in that process and prevent those new things from happening. And so there is a waiver procedure built in. It's required by the statute, and it's word for word in here what it says in the statute.
it also talks about historical properties or historical buildings, but I don't see where that's defined. And so I wonder,
Well, that's when we're talking about doing the historical district. It's not defined here, but it will be in the historical district ordinance, I mean, the historical commission ordinance.
it
Is there a
says-
specific
Yeah,
area you're
section
talking
2, no, in the bottom, no new alterations of historical buildings are to be allowed within the corporate city limits of Greenville unless review is completed. So how do you know which buildings are historical buildings and which buildings aren't historical buildings?
It's basically defined by the zone area, the central area zone.
Okay, so any building within the central area zoning district is considered a historical building.
The way that this is written, yes, that's correct.
And the only thing we're talking about is the central district, historical district downtown. We're not talking about the rest of Greenville.
It's not a historical district, it's the central area zoning district, and that's a very specifically defined area within our zoning code. That includes all the buildings on this street down to the farmer's market, and then a block north to the other side of Lee Street, and then down just before the tortilla.
On King Street.
That's correct.
So anybody that's outside that district, this has no effect. So
That's
Mr.
correct.
Satterwhite wanted to change the color of his house, he could do that.
I'm not gonna get into legal issues. But yes, this would have no effect on anything outside of this about 15 square block area.
But this has nothing to do with the facade approvals, is that correct?
Well, it specifically excludes facade grants through the downtown board.
Any other comment? My end, Jerry. Okay. I'd like city secretary to contact the council members, find out if they want to move forward on this, and if so, what days are available between now and the 24th. And then if you'll get back to me and let me know, yes, then we can move forward.
Just to be clear, it has to be after the planning and zoning commission meets, which is on the 18th. So it can only be the 19th, 20th, 21, 22, 23, 24, 6
Unless
different
we
days.
force them to meet her. But
I don't
think we
yes.
have time.
There's not time on that.
All right, thank you. All right, at this point, we're moving on to item 8A, which is an ordinance authorizing a lease agreement between the city of Greenville and Horizon Ahead LLC for entire building / hangar at the airport. And we'll wait for those of you that want to depart. Okay. Masood?
Yes, this is a hangar at our airport. We are recommending for new lease for 3 years. The price is gonna go up from $3,900 a month to $4,008 a month. And we are including a consumer price index, CPI, and then no sublease for this particular hangar. Staff recommends City Council approve the lease with Horizon Ahead LLC. I'd be glad to answer any question.
Anybody have any questions on it? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the lease as recommended by the staff.
Move for approval.
Brent,
Second.
James, or I'm sorry, Jerry. Please vote. Passes 6-0. Thank you. Next is ordinance authorizing an agreement with Texas Department of Transportation Aviation Division for routine maintenance and repairs in municipal airports. Masood?
Yes, this is a $50,000 match grant from TxDOT Aviation. And we use that for general maintenance at the airport. And the staff recommends City Council approve of this ordinance for us to sign a grant agreement with TxDOT Aviation.
Anybody have any questions? At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve this agreement as recommended by the staff.
So moved.
Second.
Did you second, Brent?
I did.
All right, thank you. Please vote. And it passes 6-0. Next item, consideration and action on an ordinance authorizing enterprise construction contract for awarding of the 2.5 million gallon Clearwater improvement. Masood?
Yes, this is one of the projects that I presented to you on our challenges and future projects. This is a 2.5 million gallon pre-stressed concrete ground storage tank at the water treatment plant. And we advertised on November 18 and November 25th. And we came up with 2 bids, one from Lakeville, Massachusetts, and one from Louisville, Kentucky. This is a very specialized type of construction. The low bidder, qualified low bidder is DNT Tanks from Wakefield, Massachusetts for $3,958,717. Staff recommends for the City Council to allow us to sign a construction contract with this company, and funds are available in Public Works 1601 account. I'd be glad to answer any question.
Anybody have any questions?
Do you have any thoughts as to why we didn't get more bids than this, and why the bids that we got are from companies that are so far away?
Yes, this is a kind of new technology. Back in old days, most ground storage tank were built from metal. Now this is a pre-stressed concrete that is going to last kind of for a long time, and you don't need the maintenance. And that's what is very specialized field, and the 2 companies are basically are doing this type of work. And
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Any other questions?
All I'll say is if our city manager, professional engineer, Sue Abraham, says we need this constructed, our water and sewer in Greenville, Texas, I am totally supportive. Thank you, Mr. Abraham.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
James, do I have a second?
Second.
Brent? Please vote. And it passes 6-0. All right, next is consideration and action on a resolution naming a temporary assistant municipal court judge. Sue, do you want to address that?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is basically your authority. This position is appointed by you. We have some vacancy because of our municipal judge and assistant judge. And I contacted one of our previous judge that served this city for a long time, and we agreed to an hourly rate acceptable to us, and staff recommends that City Council appoint Steve Schick as our temporary assistant municipal judge, so he can perform duty at our municipal court and other issues, and I'd be glad to answer any question.
Well, I want to add one thing, that the reason that we need somebody there is the two people you described are undergoing some medical problems. It's going to take them out of the office. That's why we need somebody in here. It's not like they've been fired or walked off. They've got some medical problems. Anybody have any questions on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion
I'll make that motion.
Second. Jerry seconded. Please vote. And it passes 6-0. Okay, next is consideration and action on an ordinance authorizing the approval of hotel occupancy tax funding for FY 2017-2018. Joel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. If you'll recall, back in October, the Tourism and Convention Advisory Board met, and they heard presentations from potential organizations asking for tourism money regarding the hotel occupancy tax. They deliberated and they made recommendations, which are before you tonight. And as a reminder, the Tourism Board is advisory only. The final authority and decision is that of the City Councils. I believe that since the last meeting when the decision was tabled, the council has received some financial information that was asked for. And I have a copy of that with me if you did not bring it. At the last meeting, there were some specific questions about the Hunt County Fair, and I inquired that they did have a lot of rooms that were listed. The Hunt County Fair itself rents rooms for many of the contracts require, the band contracts require rooms. One band alone asked for 12 king rooms. So many of the rooms were being purchased by the Fair Association for the band. That's part of the contract. And other rooms are mostly judges and vendors. I think it's, in my opinion, many people think it's a local event, but the judges and vendors and then the bands rent many of the rooms. Anyway, the budget line item is $75,000, and I'll be happy to try to answer questions. The recommendation of the board was listed on the agenda information sheet.
Okay.
I've got a question. Had someone called me this afternoon on several of these applicants. They've used the municipal auditorium, correct?
Yes, they do.
For the program. Is there the deposit? We do require a deposit, right, in case damage occurs?
We do require a deposit, and now that everyone rents it, pays as well.
Is there anyone, and we may have to do this in executive session, I'm sure we could name this out, do we need to have an executive session to discuss, is there anyone on this list that's using the municipal auditorium that we've had to hold part or all of the deposit for damage to the municipal auditorium?
I can only recall one, and it happened this weekend. Local majority accidentally, and they came forward and said, I have to fess up, we broke your table upstairs. They came forward. Kevin is working with the organization that rented it. We will withhold the deposit, and then the creative arts people will collect their money from the local majority. But it does not happen often. You know, it used to happen occasionally on dance recitals, but that has never been tourism funded. It does not happen very often, Mr. Evans, Councilman.
Well, the person that asked me to ask, they're watching county news right now live, so they just got their answer, so.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Brad.
There was one that happened this weekend, but nothing was being hidden, and they came forward and said, this is what happened, and they're making it good.
Hope they paid attention like this.
Yeah, we got it.
And I'm gonna ask the council if they wanna go to executive session to look at the finances that were provided as part of. I think everybody got it. Yeah, because there's financial information that has to do with how much money they got in their books and stuff like that, and that's not the open public information. Now, as far as assigning and voting on approval on that, well, that has to be done in open session. But to go in and discuss who's got how much money and whatever Doyle can add to that, tell us where the money came from, et cetera, where his data came from, we need to do that in executive session. I'm not gonna expose any of these organizations into a public information about what their financials are. What I'd like to do is, well, I'll have to go to executive session instead of breaking it up. So it is 7:18, and at this time we'll go into an executive session.